Welcome back to the Shacknews Awards. We're still handing out awards here, left and right. And next up is the best open world game of the year 2024. Open world is being applied in a quite lax, I'd say it's a relaxed definition of what an open world is this year with some of these nominees. So let's get the nominees out here and then we'll get to talking about them. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Dragon's Dogma 2, The Axis Unseen, Stalker 2, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Ozzy, you're the FF7 Rebirth apologist in this group. Would you like to talk about how it's a good open world game?
There is in fact, it's almost to its detriment that there is so much to do in this massive world of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that you can explore and take on a bunch of towers, fight monsters, do side missions. There's a variety of things that you can do depending on the world you're in, whether you're in the Gold Saucer and you're checking out some of the attractions, or whether you're in Costa del, what's it called, Greg?
Sol.
Costa del Sol, whether you're riding on a Segway and just playing some other games there. But like, there's a lot to do in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, almost to the point of overload. In fact, to the point of overload.
Mm-hmm. To iterate what Ozzy said, like, I think the game has its faults, sure, right? But like, the one thing that they do with the remake and the Rebirth is the world does feel like a real place that people actually exist in. And that's a big thing to come from like a game that was like polygon horseshoe stuff that felt very, very, basic in the 97 game. And it felt like people really feel like there's a real economy in Costa del Sol. Like, there's an economy, and it's a tourist economy, and it's very important. The people need it. They'll die without it. One of their friends bought a hotel. That poor guy, if he doesn't, who's going to pay off the hotel? So I think that's where in terms of like its existence, like exploring this world, like it does feel like it's a real place where real people live, and there's like real businesses and real jobs and real issues that they have with the Shinra company and other people outside of the town, which is kind of interesting because there's no functioning government. Everything kind of just like they manage themselves, really. There's no police force, right? There is no electoral official. There's no democracy. So I just thought that's interesting, just to say it does feel like a real place with real people with real problems. I said the same thing in the remake review.
And a lot of those people do have problems that they want you to take care of. Like, I wasn't just expecting to go into Gungaga and have an old lady asking me to help her catch her chickens, which, minor spoiler, wow, that ends up being one of the most twisted side missions in the entire game just because of how it ends.
Yeah,
I'm not spoiling it.
So, as the apologist FF7 in the group, yeah, the game's definitely not perfect.
Like something bad's going to happen to those chickens.
Yeah, let's just put it that way. Poor Red. He's traumatized at the end of it.
Oh, no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a fine nomination. I'll allow it. I don't want to play it, but you're right. There's a lot of stuff to do.
You don't want to play it because there's too much stuff to do.
When I heard how long it took to get to, like, I don't know, the Gold Saucer, I was like, yeah, I'm out. But, I hope people enjoy it. Who wants to talk about Dragon's Dogma 2's open world?
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think why Dragon's Dogma 2 probably should win this whole damn category is because I think all the most interesting stuff in that game happens in the open world. In another category, Bill talked about how he loves games that don't have fast travel because he likes the things that happen in between cities. And everything memorable in Dragon's Dogma 2 for me happened in between cities, right? Where even if you try to take a cart from one city to the other, you may be awakened in the middle of it because bandits are trying to rob you, or there was a random troll on a bridge that's now attacking you. You've got to jump out the back and start fighting. Or sometimes you'll be roaming through the woods and you'll hear soldiers screaming in the distance, and you'll go and they're fighting like a cyclops and they're getting like smashed into walls and stuff. Even there's a city where sometimes you hang around too much outside, a troll might just wander into the city, and now you've got like random shopkeepers and stuff fighting. I think that the way that Capcom designs the open world in Dragon's Dogma 2, it really does make like the open areas the most interesting areas, where sometimes you just kind of want to run around and see what's happening. There will be dragons, or I forget, maybe like hippogriffs that'll fly around, that'll descend and try to fight you if you're in their territory. There's just so much, I think, that's packed into these, specifically the open world areas of that game, that makes it the best, in my opinion.
It seems like people have forgotten about this game just because of where it released on the calendar. Like, it was like a Q1 game, and it was really kind of everywhere for like a week or two.
It was also very close to Erdtree.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah,
that's right.
For me,
it was
with
a few
the
weeks
open
between
world,
them. And sorry, go ahead, Sam.
It's all the mechanics that work together to create that open world experience for me. Like, to speak about what Donna was speaking just then in terms of traveling around, I wanted to catch a cart or a wagon to the next city over, but I arrived at the cart place too early. So I just waited. I passed time. I just waited until the cart was ready, and then I got in the back and traveled. But then I woke up halfway through because we were getting attacked by an ogre. The cart got obliterated. I defeated the ogre, and then I had to walk the rest of the way to the town. But night was starting to fall, and the environment changes insofar as the enemies become tougher to fight. So now I was getting ganked in a canyon by enemies that were powered up. I made my way even further, found a campsite, which I was able to rest at, save, like fiddle with my build, cook some food, replenish my teammates, keep walking, met some other people who I hired on, found some crafting materials to help boost up what I needed to do, and eventually made it to the point, and everyone was like, thank goodness you're here. And not only just like, thank goodness you're here, but the time matters in that game, Dono, because I was rereading your review. Time passes and you can miss out on doing quests if you just linger or take too long or ignore them or get distracted and do something else. So the fact that I made it there in time felt good as well. And then the map, as you're exploring, slowly uncovers as you are tracking and mapping it out. So, you know, it might not be available to you at the very beginning, but you've got an idea of where something is. And so as you go, oh, I want to actually map out this area a little bit more so I can see, and maybe put down a fast travel point that, you know, you only get like 10 of them and you have to buy them and they're expensive. But you got that choice of like, I'm going to be returning here quite often, so I'm going to put down something, or I'm going to pay for transportation at a wagon. So I really like that about Dragon's Dogma 2.
Go ahead, TJ.
There are some very bold choices in Dragon's Dogma 2's open world. I was talking about it a little bit off recording, but like I had an instance like the world outside in the wilderness and the world inside like a main hub town, they're the same world, always interacting with each other. And to that point, like I woke up from a rest one time and went to go like down to the market to buy some stuff for my next adventure. And a troll just came into the city and punted the shopkeeper I was working with and just started going ham on everybody around, to the point where 12 people had to gather up and just join me in beating on this thing in the middle of the town that you like use as your hub. You're not safe there. You're not safe anywhere. It's crazy how much like the persistence of the open world in Dragon's Dogma 2 goes.
I think the thing that's really interesting about listening to just these, you know, Donovan, TJ, and Sam talking about the game is how much what they're talking about is emergent gameplay, and how the systems they've created and the world that they've created allows for these things to happen. Like, that's excellent game design. If these unexpected random occurrences happen, and like Sam's story, like your story about what happened to your carriage, that didn't happen to TJ the same way. It didn't happen to Donovan the same way. That randomness of how the world works, I think speaks to what this category is about, more than like, oh, it's a vast world with a lot of stuff to do. Yeah, that's fine. But your example, TJ, of like a dragon or whatever attacking your town while you're in it and seeing all these NPCs come together with you to fight it, like, that's emergent gameplay storytelling that does not exist in every nominee in this category. So I think that's a really good point that you guys brought up.
Just to reiterate what TJ said, like he sent me that clip. I was able to make a Shrek meme out of it. But the raw clip, TJ actually stares at the ogre for like 10 seconds because he's like, that's amazing, as it's murdering all these like villagers and then engages, which is, I don't know, that adds to the world. It is funny. I'm only like an hour into the game, but like I can see why that game is a really good, vibrant world that just, like you said, the moments in between everything else.
I was utterly baffled because I hadn't considered the possibility that a giant creature could just march into town and start going crazy.
I get that all the time for your gameplay when people stop for a minute and I'm like, they're looking at it, like processing it, and then they go.
Oh yeah, can't your like companions get infected?
Yes, that's another bold choice in that game. There's a disease in Dragon's Dogma 2.
That can just wipe out towns?
A pawn can be affected with it if they interact with another pawn that has the disease, and if you leave them unchecked for too long, then go to sleep in any of the hub towns, everybody in that town, including quest givers and important NPCs, will be dead when you wake up.
It was like cutting people down, yeah. There's a cemetery that's persistent. Or a morgue in one time you can go and you can find like dead NPCs, and there's like rare items you can use to resurrect people and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up getting your side quest from the morgue.
Yep.
Yeah, you couldn't. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great nomination. This next one's good too. The Axis Unseen. Nate Perkypile shipped his game this year.
He did.
Man,
nearly a solo project too.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell how much experience Nate has in designing cool worlds from his experience at Bethesda and such, because the Axis Unseen just bleeds cool in its environments. It is so cool to wander through that world, and it's just like it dumps you in there and explains nothing, and you just gotta figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just like that about it because it doesn't hold your hand. It tells you enough to be like, you get arrows and there's magic and there's creatures out there. And then it's just like, go have fun.
Yep.
And every step of that game is like seeing how far you can go and seeing what you can get away with before, like, these. They're all cryptids. They're like Bigfoots and dryads and werewolves and all sorts of crazy creatures from mythological lore that you're supposed to like hunt. And sometimes they end up hunting you. And it's really, really amazing what he has done with the Unreal Engine 5, because he was one of the earliest adopters of it that I know of in the indie scene.
Yeah, definitely. And the lighting effects in that game are pretty outstanding as a result. Yeah, Nate has a lot of experience building like cool environments and interesting places to like stick in your head. It's by definition, it's very much an open world game. Like, and your point about it not holding your hand, I enjoy that in open world games because it gives you a sense of freedom. It's not like, you know, when you play a game and there's a waypoint, you're like, come on. Whereas like, you know, if a game has a compass or whatever, that's fine. But like telling you where to go, holding your hand, making you go from tower to tower to tower, like that's lame. But being able to create your own story in Axis Unseen, I think, is pretty cool. From what I've read from other people's thoughts on it, like the only negative is there's not like a whole lot to do outside of the core gameplay of just fighting things and traversing the level.
It's mostly exploration and hunting. And
so it's kind of like the opposite of Final Fantasy VII, where like Final Fantasy VII has like every mini game under the sun. This actually is more the environment versus you kind of the game, but just both games are cool for different reasons.
Once again, speaking of like persistent gameplay, I don't know if you all saw my stream, but there was a moment where I was like hunting a small creature because it like came up and hit me, and I was like, "What? No, you're going down. You're gonna die." And I chased after it, and it ran around a rock, and I run around that rock and look up, and there's like a 15-foot tall stag facing me down. I'm like, no.
Yep. Once again, emergent gameplay. I think emergent gameplay goes hand in hand with good open world design. So if you're telling me a story that I didn't experience, like it's kind of a sign of good open world design, which leads us to our next nominee. Bill?
Yes.
Tell the world how
what do you want to talk about?
Do you want to tell the world how much you love the open world in Stalker 2?
Oh boy, do I want to tell the world.
By all
Stalker
means.
2, even though the entire game is designed in a way that it's the whole world is trying to kill you, essentially. It feels like home when I play Stalker 2 because it's not so much that I am chasing a quest necessarily. I mean, there's of course quests, but I'm mostly existing in the world. And when I play that game, I'm playing it with my agenda. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And when I traverse the world, even though there's a map, a lot of the traversal that I do is done through the environment. One of the very first areas that you'll get to once you get through like just the intro is a safe zone in the lesser zone. And above that is a balloon. It's over top of that zone. Pretty much anywhere you go in Stalker 2, you can see that balloon. So it's almost like a beacon of safety. Now, granted, if it's far away, there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to try to kill you between where you are and where that is. But you can look at that and say, hey, that's where home is, or that's where a safe zone is, for example. You can stand on top of a building and see the power plant in Chernobyl that had the nuclear disaster. Like you can just look at it from miles away and say, I'm going to walk over there and see what happens. And speaking of emerging gameplay, I totally agree. I think that that's one of the major things that make an open world great is not necessarily what you do when you get to your destination, but what happens when you're on your way. So the journey.
Yeah.
And everything I do in Stalker is emerging gameplay. I think, Asif, I sent you a clip of a gunfight.
Mhm.
I know I showed David the same one where I crossed this bridge and I saw this NPC and he's just sitting on the bridge. I have no idea to this day what he was doing on that bridge. He was just sitting there chilling. I walked a little further and 3 enemies started shooting at me. I had no answer for them. They were overwhelming me. I was not going to win that fight. And I kept retreating. I kept moving backwards. And eventually I crossed back over that bridge. As they chased me, that NPC was not having it and immediately joined the fight. So now I had someone on my side.
Mhm.
We defeated them. 2 seconds later, a bloodsucker was in the area, and I was like, you know what, NPC, you're doing such a great job. I'm going to let you handle that bloodsucker as well. Didn't really work out. That NPC is gone, and Persistence is not on that bridge. Never seen him since then. But he was able to do enough damage that I cleaned up the bloodsucker. And it's just moments like that. I've had truces with enemies where I was about to be in a fight with other stalkers and a bunch of monsters showed up. And instead of shooting at each other, we shot at the monsters. And I had this tiny little bit of hope that when it was all said and done, we would have found some common ground. Not at all. They immediately started to try to kill me once we cleaned up the monsters. But it's just a wonderful world that I love to be in. It's probably the most gorgeous world I've seen this year in terms of graphics. It is stunning to be in, whether it's the storms, which are amazing, the emissions, which basically mean whatever it was you're doing, you have to seek shelter. You could be in a fight and everybody is going to take off. It's like, nope, you'll hide under the same roof as your enemy 2 minutes ago just because the only thing that matters now is getting shelter. It's just a wonderful thing. I love the exploration. I'm never going somewhere because I have to. I'm going there because I can't wait to see what I find when I get there. I'm not there because I'm chasing loot. I'm going into this drain pipe because it looks really cool and I just want to see what's happening. What do I find at the end of that drain pipe? I'm leaving my gear and stashes so that I know when I come back through that area, I have the meds that I need, I have ammunition that I need, and I can pick it up and continue on. It's just a place that every time I visit it, I just feel like I'm home.
Nice. Yeah, and like you said, it continues the trend in this category of just people talking about emergent gameplay. Like I think that's going to be a trend here. The emissions are definitely interesting, Bill, because it sounds stupid, but it reminds me of Bowser's Fury. When the emissions show up, it's like when Bowser shows up in Bowser's Fury, you're like, yeah, I gotta hide. I gotta stop whatever I'm doing so I don't die. I think it's cool to see that in Stalker, and it's one of those moments where like the environment really is showcased, the lightning effects or the electricity in the air, how the colors change. It's just very cool.
I
It
saw
really
somebody-
rewards patience and introspection, where I I discovered the information that a certain type of artifact has a chance to appear around gravitational anomalies. And I was like, okay, I remember where there's a mass of those, so I'm going to plan out my journey there. And I've got a lot of stuff that I don't need, so I'm going to go back to base and I'm going to unload what I don't need and just prepare for this journey. And it's that rewarding cycle of like preparation and reward, and now the return journey to make sure that you get back safely with what you put so much effort into trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
But also
all the
trying
while
to
it's
adapt,
just-
right?
Yeah.
Because it never goes as planned. You're like, hey, today I'm going to go over here and do this. And then, like, the emissions are a great example, but that reminded me, Asif, this didn't happen to me. I absolutely got hit by lightning as I was walking around, but I was watching someone's clip and they were sitting at a campfire with other stalkers, right? At which point, like, you can pick up a guitar in the game. You can actually play the guitar, like it has the actual, I don't know what they're called, but notes that you need. So if you were skilled, you could actually play like a real song in Stalker at a campfire with your guitar. Somebody was just sitting at a campfire and there were other stalkers around, and this bolt of lightning came down and just cooked him. That was it. He was dead. Stuff like that is absolutely just amazing the way that it plays out. And I agree with Sam. Like, I play it honestly, like it reminds me a lot of Fallout 4, because even though you can fast travel in Fallout 4 and Stalker, but differently, I don't. And part of the reason I don't is I like to plan that journey. I like to think about like, hey, here's where I am, here's where I want to go, this is what I want to do. And then that anxiety kicks in of like, can I make it? And an emission hits and you're like, hey, all these guns that I really wanted to like carry across the map to sell, I have to drop those on the road because I'm about to die through this emission or whatever it happens to be. And it's about really tough decisions. It's not supposed to be pick up every piece of loot that you ever find and, you know, be a loot goblin. It's about like do what you have to do to survive. And I think that's amazing.
And so you're telling me there's not a magic wand that you can summon old beds with in this game?
Nope.
To Bill's point about decisions and like the risk reward, I got halfway into the second area during the review period and I was loaded up with gear and I was looking ahead and I didn't know where the next safe zone was, and I turned around and I looked at the balloon in the sky and I'm like, I'm laden with goods that I want to sell. Do I risk it pushing ahead and like maybe get a chance to sell something or find something, or do I turn around and go back to the base, which I know is there and I can see the balloon? And you know, I turned around and sold the stuff, and it felt like that essence that I get from Dark Souls. You know, the first time you play that, you go, do I push forward or do I retreat? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a solid nomination there. But we should move on. Like I said, there's a game that came out. It's called The Legend of Old Bed. No, it's The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. They brought the open world formula to the top-down Zelda genre, and I think they crushed it with this. It very much. I think Ozzy, you said it's like the breath. They injected Breath of the Wild into the 2D Zelda formula with this game, and yeah.
The fact that there are people with their own problems that you can help out, and it's on that classic 2D Zelda map, it gives a breath of fresh air to it. It really does, and I love the different ways you can approach these side missions. I love that there's so many of them to do, and they're not critical to finishing the game, but they make them enticing enough that you want to get into them.
Mm-hmm. You can get stuff from them. You can make money off of them, or you unlock something, you get potions, whatever. Like there's a reason to do them. Also, like if you're a completionist, I think you're going to want to go after all of these. The other thing is like side quests in Tears of the Kingdom, some of them were tedious and boring even. We talked about last year in the deliberation. There's just so much to do in that world. Whereas like the side quests in Echoes of Wisdom, like none of them felt like, oh man, I don't want to do that. It was just like, I'll get to it when I can kind of thing. But to your point, they're optional most of the time. But just the amount of random stuff that happens to you in that game. I always point to this, but when you get to the Hebrew Mountains and it's not like the rest of the dungeons that you've played so far, like there's no village in the Hebrew Mountains. There's just one guy, a solitary dude who lives up there, and he ends up saving you or whatever. And like you're out in a blizzard, and this guy saves you. But like Conde, that whole experience with Conde up there, I thought was delightful. The world that they built within the rifts, I think, is some of the best dungeon design they've ever done in a Zelda game. Which after 2 Zelda games that I think left people wanting more when it came to dungeons and puzzles, this game's just dripping with both. Like there's puzzles everywhere in this game. There's open world puzzles. Some as simple as like you see a heart container, right? A piece of a heart. You don't know how to get to it, but you figure it out using your echoes or whatever. Like there's emergent gameplay all over Echoes of Wisdom like that. And what I liked about it, it wasn't, oh, here's shrines again. No, instead they went back to the pieces of the heart, right? And a different way to upgrade your sword fighter gameplay. So like the systems that they created in the game, I think are really cool. But then the hacks, the amount of just normally I wouldn't say that, oh, this game's awesome because it's so broken. But being able to break these Zelda games in recent history have led to even more emergent gameplay, right?
Broken games can be fun. I mean, that's part of why Super Mario Maker 2 was our game of the year, is because it can be broken as hell, and brokenness kind of adds to it.
Yeah, and like solving a shrine.
Good.
Yeah, solving a shrine
in this category is full of jank, and that's part of what makes it charming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like being able to solve the same puzzle with different solutions, I think is cool. And Zelda does that in spades. So it's not to mention it's just the way that you feel as you discover the map, and the way they handle like the fog on the map as you clear it up by going to different places. I thought that was pretty solid. But yeah, it's just taking the Breath of the Wild formula and dumping it into the 2D top-down Zelda format. It could have gone terribly, and it didn't. It worked really well, where this is one of my favorite top-down Zelda games of all time now. Mainly because of the gameplay mechanics. But we talked about it in other categories. We don't have to lament on it anymore. Our last nomination, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This kind of goes back to the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth argument. I can't remember. I think, Ozzy, you were making it, where there's just a lot of stuff to do. The worlds that they build in Like a Dragon tend to be pretty full of things to do, be it kart racers, or, in the past they had the shareholder meeting mini game. They do some cool stuff like that, but I think, Bill, you played this recently and you're like, it's kind of lacking in the open part of the open world.
And I'm not going to be negative about it, because I didn't get to play as much of it as what you should get to play to like truly get an overall picture of the game.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of video games and even open world games, at times they do have restrictions. Like even in Grand Theft Auto, if you go to a certain place, you get shot down until you unlock it through the story, right? But they find ways through gameplay to make that sort of fluid. In Red Dead Redemption 2, you can't go to a certain place. If you try to go there, the sheriffs will hunt you down and kill you. It's at least sort of cohesive in that. I started playing this, and I was just running down the street, and I saw these icons on my map, and I didn't really pay any attention to them. But I tried to run, and I just hit an invisible wall, and I couldn't run. I couldn't go anywhere. And then I realized that all those icons were basically stop signs that were saying, you can't go here, you can't go here, you can't go here, you can't go here, you have to go here. And I'm okay with the game saying, look, we're just kind of getting into things, and this is the only area you can go to, but please do it in a way that isn't like me just sprinting endlessly at an invisible wall and then running down another street and going, oh, I can't go down this street either. Like I have to go another, like that kind of, it just rubbed me the wrong way, not with what it was doing, but how it was implemented, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been nominated, but I think compared to some of these other games are just much more open. But they do have the emergent gameplay aspect of it too. So I don't know. Anyone else have anything to say, or should we just get to voting? Okie doke. Let me get my ballot up here. Open world game. Let's start with David.
I've been really impressed with what Bill's shown me and what he said. I'm going to go with Stalker 2.
Mm-hmm. Donovan.
Dragon's Dogma 2.
Okay. Denny. Spreadsheet almost got me again. Oh, you're muted, Denny.
I'm going with Dragon's Dogma 2 as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, Donovan, you made a pretty good case for it. Okay. Greg.
Dragon's Dogma 2.
Uh-oh, Bill. TJ.
It really would have been Dragon's Dogma 2 this year if Stalker 2 hadn't come in like a lightning strike hitting an unsuspecting stalker. So I'm going with Stalker.
Ozzy.
I almost want to flip a coin again, but
No.
I was greatly amused by these Dragon's Dogma 2 anecdotes. That as much as I love the jank in Stalker, I'm gonna go with Dragon's Dogma 2.
Mm-hmm. Bill, I think you're Stalker 2.
I think you know, yeah.
Yeah. Sam.
By like a hair's breadth, it's got to be Dragon's Dogma 2. I know.
Wow.
I know. Bill's going to punish me for it later, but
I know.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was
The
coming.
Destiny Mobile. You're gonna have to play Destiny Mobile.
I'm just gonna make him keep playing Destiny. I don't even have to go mobile.
I guess
man.
that's true too. Anyway,
We said this a lot
Steve.
during this study.
It's like a hair's breadth. It's like a hair's breadth.
Steve.
I'm going with Stalker 2.
Wow. So that leaves me in an interesting position, really. See, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 votes for Stalker 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes for Dragon's Dogma 2. If
Awesome.
I vote for Stalker 2, we all have to vote again. Like it's gridlock.
Causes chaos. Likes chaos.
That's how this goes.
But when we sat here and Donovan told a story about Dragon's Dogma 2, and TJ told a story, and Sam told a story, those stories were all different and took place in different places and were about different things. And why I bring that up is that I feel like the number of things that can happen to you in Stalker 2 is less than the amount of things that could happen to you in the world in Dragon's Dogma 2. Because just the nature of the games. One, the setting of the game, all these things play into that. But because of just the amount of things that can happen to you, and that they're not forced, they're not these things that you walk into, they just kind of happen. Like what happened with that giant ogre in your town, TJ, that just happened. And I know that similar things can happen in Stalker 2. But what I'm getting at, I'm gonna vote for Dragon's Dogma 2. I think it's I think you guys did a good job of explaining what makes it different, what made it stick out this year. And every nominee in here deserves to be here. Some of them I think execute on the what I view as like great open world design better than others. Like I always just kind of put these up next to Breath of the Wild in my head. And I'm like, are you more like Breath of the Wild or are you more like a Far Cry game? And I think that some of these in this category are more like a Far Cry game. Dragon's Dogma 2 sounds more like the kind of stuff that you would see in like a, more open world Zelda type game. Anyway, we got a winner, just barely. It was a close one. But congratulations, Capcom. We didn't forget Dragon's Dogma 2 came out this year. And it is our Shacknews Award winner for Best Open World Game of the Year 2024.
Welcome, Arisen. We pawns have long awaited your arrival.